The old charm and timeless beauty of Hoi An has always been a source of inspiration for the many visitors who pass by here. And our featured expat for today, who happens to be a photographer, is no exception. Now, beyond just being mesmerized by the location, he is also more mesmerized by the stories of the local people, the Vietnamese people who he meets, whose spirit and charm he tries to capture in his many portraits. We'll get to meet him in this edition of Expat Living. Photographer Rehan hails from Normandy, France. The publication Paris Match once described him as the photographer who captures the soul of his models, with signature close-ups and headshots promising stories well beyond the initial gaze of the people he documents. Known for his portraits of people in Vietnam, Cuba, and India, Rehan's works have been featured on National Geographic, BBC, and Travel-Live, among others. His photographic journey has taken him to 35 nations before he settled in Hoi An, Vietnam in 2011. His love for the nation and people here have only grown stronger ever since.
I spend a lot of time with people, and sometimes I discover myself actually. It's maybe not one memory, but maybe the 6 years traveling in the country, I learn about myself, that I like people more than photography actually.
Rehan's many travels across the country have culminated into a collection of photos and even costumes from many different ethnic groups across the country. And he has brought all of this back to his home base here in Hoi An in order to open up a very special museum and art gallery that started from January of 2017. We'll go now to see where this museum is. Museum called Precious Heritage is where I meet up with Rehan. Hello, Rehan.
Hey,
hello.
long time.
How are you?
Yeah, very good. Welcome.
We then embark on a little tour.
So, welcome to Precious Heritage Museum. That's my private collection. This floor is about the northern Vietnam tribes.
The museum offers up a colorful and diverse display of costumes and portraits of ethnic groups that Rehan has collected and photographed during his 6 years traversing the country.
I would like to introduce you the Adu people. Yes. That's the smallest ethnic group in Vietnam, only 376 people. Only one village in Nhiếp ảnh province, in Tung Dung district. Very close to Laos, you can see here, just on the map.
Yes.
It took me 2 or 3 days to find them because there's no 3G in this area. And also on the last information date from 2006.
And this is their costume?
Yeah, so the very interesting thing is now they are not making the costume anymore. Every year there's one family can have the costume, and next year is another family for the tête or for the
Since they don't make it anymore.
Yes, they don't make it anymore. But they have only 5 costumes left in the whole community. And this is one of the 5 actually.
And you were able to get one of
the chief of the village, after a few days and talking, and I explained my project about this free museum. And then they say me that they didn't want to have all the ethnic people, but not the Adu. And then, yeah, it's probably one of the very meaningful gifts that I had during my 6 years in Vietnam.
Rehan's idea for the Precious Heritage Project and eventually museum began simply from his travels in the country, starting initially in 2007.
And I went to Sapa, and then I went there to see the rice fields. But when I went there, I just take photos of people. I was surprised because I was completely, I mean, I didn't know anything about Sapa. I just went there really for the landscape.
From the 7 tribes that he photographed in the Sapa region, his curiosity grew.
I decided to find them one by one, and then during 6 years I've been traveling by motorbike all over the country, trying to find the 54.
His encounters with people goes beyond any language barrier. Behind each shot is time well spent with the locals to learn customs and simply to connect.
First they're curious, they say, why you do that? They ask me always, why are you interested in my, they're really surprised. And the second step in, they're very proud. You can see on this photo, these people, look at this lady, look at this one, they're super happy to pose actually.
As of August 2017, Rayhan has been able to visit and photograph 48 out of 54 ethnic groups of Vietnam.
This is the Katu from Quang Nam, one of my favorite ones.
Yes.
And this is another special one, and again, it's very meaningful.
Knowing about Rayhan's museum, a delegation of people from the Katu ethnic group in Quang Nam came to visit Rayhan to give him the very last tree bark costume of their village.
They were wearing that like almost 100 years ago when French people, I found some text about French people saying that they met indigenous people in the mountain wearing very strange costume made from tree bark. They didn't have cotton or things or hemp at that time, so they used the tree, and so that's really special. There's 5 different kind of tree. Huh?
Yes.
This is one of them.
Very kind of the paper
Like paper,
texture.
yeah.
Rayhan's museum has become a favorite destination for many visitors since its opening in January 2017.
Thực sự là những câu chuyện của ảnh rất là ấn tượng. Ảnh viếng thăm từng cái nhóm dân tộc ở đất nước mình. Ảnh được tặng một số cái bộ trang phục rất là hiếm có của những cái bộ trang phục mà còn sót lại duy nhất hoặc là chỉ có vài bộ thôi, thì thực sự rất là đáng quý.
I love the museum. I actually first saw his work in the Women's Museum up in Hanoi, and that made me want to come here as well to explore it further. The layout of the museum is great. The way it tells a story as you go round, I find it really interesting. And I actually studied fashion at home, so it's quite interesting for me to see the traditional clothes of the culture and everything. What I love is that there is a story attached to every photograph almost. I really enjoy that.
Each display brings up in him unforgettable memories and distinct characteristics of each of the ethnic groups. There's the Ramum ethnic group, whose remote location took Rayhan 3 years to reach. The women in this group believe that a broken ear like this is good luck. Then there's the Bana man, who exudes utmost pride in his attire woven from a traditional loom. Colorful yet tattered costumes of the black Lolo that sadly signal a vanishing culture. Then there's this Cham girl by the name of An Phước, whose blue eyes immediately draw audiences into the portrait. Phước paternal great-grandfather was also French. Rayhan has formed a friendship with the family, visiting them often, giving gifts of bicycles for the kids to go to school, and even a cow so that the family could further build their livelihood. This is part of the Rayhan's Giving Back project, where he uses proceeds of his photo sales to support those whom he photographs.
I think as a photographer, it's a little bit like a duty to give something back to this country, and that's the purpose, that's the introduction of my museum. It's something I wanted to give back to Vietnam.
Rayhan's photos, like him, have traveled the length of the country. His precious heritage project fittingly visited the Vietnam Museum of Ethnology in August 2017.
Để những cái bức ảnh nó sống động ấy, để có hồn ấy, thì đó là cả một quá trình giao lưu giữa người nhiếp ảnh và lại người dân. Và chúng ta thấy là những cái bức ảnh của ông là vô giá bởi vì nó rất có hồn. Theo tôi cho rằng là đấy là một cái bộ ảnh rất là quý để cho chúng ta tiếp tục lưu giữ những cái giá trị văn hóa của dân tộc.
Rayhan believes raising awareness is the best tool for cultural preservation.
the challenge maybe for a country like Vietnam is to, at the same time, growing in terms of economy, but at the same time preserving the authenticity and the culture. And I always think that's the best way to preserve the culture, these people, to preserve their culture, is to value them outside their community.
Alongside his display of 35 photos and costumes in Hanoi, he also invited a group of Hmong friends from Sapa to come to the exhibition.
Khi mà em đến đây ấy, với một bức hình của nhân tài bọn em, tuy đó là không phải là hình của em nhưng mà em cảm thấy rất vui ạ, bởi vì là có thể một bức hình ở đây có thể cho tất cả mọi người trên thế giới này có thể nhìn thấy, và bọn em cũng rất muốn là họ có thể lên Sapa, và bọn em cũng rất là vui khi được chào đón họ đến Sapa và xem cái tục lệ dân tộc của bọn em ạ.
For Phil Houlihan, an expat working in tourism in Vietnam, ethnic culture is an untapped potential for the country.
These costumes, the photographs particularly, allow Vietnam to come alive. So for me, I think Vietnam has very nice beaches, very nice temples, but the one thing that Vietnam is very, very special is the minority people, their costumes, their language and their culture. Rayhan has done an amazing job at drawing international attention to something I think Vietnam is still unknown for. And the more people that know about this, I believe people will come to Vietnam and then want to come again.
Living in Hoi An, one of Rayhan's favorite pastime is to venture out into the rural areas here in Quang Nam province on his motorbike in search of the next wonderful story and beautiful face to capture.
I fell in love with Hoi An, with the food, with the landscape. I like the lifestyle. I like to be on the motorbike and just go in the mountain. That's what I like.
Rayhan's adventure today has taken him to a local sedge field, where locals are collecting sedge to weave mats. In Cam Kim district outside of Hoi An town, a woman preps the sedge for weaving by dyeing them with color.
It's a kind of job that you cannot see, kind of work that you cannot find in Hoi An. You always find this kind of activity outside in the countryside. In terms of photography, we have the smoke, the red color, the fire. So that's interesting to see how they make these kind of things that we found at the market for 70, 100,000 dong, I guess. So, yeah, I like it.
Then Rayhan heads off to see one of the oldest sedge mat makers in Cam Kim get to work. With time, the colorful patterns in the mat come alive.
When you travel, there are those places you never forget. Eventually, you end up calling one of these places your new home. You learn to appreciate the new environment, the new culture. But what touches your heart the most is the people you meet.
Another prominent project that Rayhan is pursuing is the Ageless Beauty project, where he captures portraits of Vietnamese elderlies.
Their smile brightens your days. The experience humbles you. And above all, there is their love. The type of love that makes you a better person and teaches you the true meaning of sharing.
His very first publication, Vietnam Mosaic of Contrast in 2014, was too first inspired by the then 74-year-old Mrs. Bùi Thị Song, a boat rower in Hội An. He has since grown a love for capturing wrinkles.
I like to think that the process of aging should not be reversed by all this cosmetic product, and I think that wrinkles is a nice gift. It's your story written on your face.
He has formed friendships with many elderly citizens in Quang Nam. Mrs. Tiên here is the grandmother of Rehan's friend.
They're all more than 80 years old, and I think it's beautiful to see a very old lady with the eyes of a child. Despite of their hard life or their poor condition, they still have something very childish in their eyes, and that's something unique, really. I've been in 35 countries and I've never seen that. There's a message to go to see your grandmother and your grandfather when they're still here, because often I felt these people became like grandmother, like a family. I have many grandmothers in Vietnam, so there's maybe another message behind is appreciate these people when they're still with us.
As part of his Precious Heritage project, Rehan came up with the idea of bringing ethnic groups to Hội An to introduce their culture to locals and tourists. The Cơ Tu people of Quang Nam came for 3 nights beginning in August 2017, holding a festival in the Old Town.
Tôi thấy rất tốt, tại vì ông chụp ảnh này, ông đem những thông tin văn hóa của người Cơ Tu rất nhiều mà rất đúng phong tục. Ông đem xuống tới Hội An chúng ta và được các bạn bè quốc tế là chấp nhận và tham quan xem và đem những cái hình ảnh văn hóa người Cơ Tu chúng tôi rất mừng và rất chỉ cảm ơn anh Hoàn.
The ethnic group engaged visitors in learning more about traditional weaving techniques.
I like the fact that I am helping to encourage these handicrafts to continue and thus preserving Indigenous cultures. So I will value this, I will take it home and use it and remember these cultures.
The crowd joined in as the Cơ Tu people performed their sky dance called Tum Tum Za Za in the old quarters.
Em rất là tự hào vì là một người nước ngoài mà anh Rehan anh rất là tâm huyết về văn hóa Cơ Tu và đặc biệt các dân tộc thiểu số ở Việt Nam. Anh được tìm hiểu nhiều về văn hóa tập tục và anh còn lưu giữ rất là nhiều hình ảnh về người Cơ Tu tại bảo tàng của anh, và tiếp theo thì anh cũng sẽ tiếp tục gìn giữ tất cả các sản vật của người Cơ Tu để giới thiệu cho du khách nước ngoài.
My biggest dream is to bring the 54 here. To do like a kind of a carnival like Venice or Rio. Once a year, 54 ethnic tribes here with the Menom and their elephants. Why not? Elephant in the town, imagine. All the old town with all the gong from the Bana, from the Ede and all these tribes with all costume. It will help them to prepare their costume all year just waiting for this festival. And I think it's possible.
Walking along the streets of the historic port town of Hội An, where for centuries cultures have converged, Rehan shares with me his long-term aspiration of building interests in ethnic people's culture in the country.
This project is at the same time to value them and to show them that someone is interested in them. And at the second time is also to, all the stories are written in Vietnamese because my first audience is, I'm trying to target is Vietnamese people. Then maybe the new generation has to be more curious, and I think it will help them to build their future. You know, culture will always protect the country, you know.
Rayhan's story began right here in Hội An, but as you've seen, it's also gone to different locations and places in Vietnam, also introducing the beauty and heartfelt stories of the Vietnamese people to international friends. And Rayhan was our featured expat for this week, and in the following, we'll take a look at Time Out.
The first ever paraglide was invented in the US in 1967. However, it wasn't till the late 70s and early 80s that it became a favourite sport. Since then, paragliding has embarked on a global expansion.
What you can see right here, right behind me, is the magnificent scenery of Hoành Vô district in Quảng Ninh province, one of the best destinations for paragliding in Vietnam. Now, you've seen the excitement and thrills of this sport in the clip. You may want to get some hands-on experience for yourself, which is exactly what we're doing in this edition of Time Out. So what are you waiting for? Let's do this! Established in 2015, northeastern Vietnam or Đông Bắc paragliding has been the home for around 500 paragliding enthusiasts. Among these, its youngest member is only 15 years old.
Khi được bay trên không thì cảm giác rất là thích, thoải mái và dễ chịu hơn.
Bất cứ một con người nào trước tiên là sinh ra người ta không hay bay. Và khi được bay những chuyến bay đầu tiên sẽ dẫn đến những cái đam mê tăng dần lên, theo dần đều. Và càng bay càng sẽ đam mê nhiều lên.
Em chào anh Hiền.
Chào bạn.
Anh đang chuẩn bị đồ để chơi dù lượn đúng không anh?
Mình đang chuẩn bị bộ dù đôi. Và cánh dù bay đôi và bay đơn thì về cấu hình nó rất giống nhau. Nó chỉ to, dù đôi nó chỉ to hơn thôi. Đấy, rồi dành cho hai người. Thì với bộ dù nó bao gồm có cánh dù, ghế ngồi của khách và ghế ngồi của phi công đây. Và kèm theo nữa là có một bộ dù phụ để đảm bảo an toàn cho chuyến bay. Cả hành khách lẫn phi công thì phi công và hành khách đều có mũ bảo hiểm và giày cao cổ, thật quá mát chân. Và mời bạn bay thử cùng với mình luôn với bộ dù đôi này.
Vâng, hay quá. Very exciting, huh? Running, as you can now see the magnificent landscape around me right now. So basically right here you can see that over there, which is wonders of the world, recognised by UNESCO. You can see Halong Bay right now. At the moment I'm feeling both rather excited and scared at the same time, but mostly excited, I'd say.
Hoành Vô is ideal for paragliding due to its favourable wind conditions, throughout 11 months of the year.
So what a hell of an experience that was. I got a little bit dizzy along the way, but the thrill was way too overwhelming for me to ignore all of that. Trust me, there's no better way to enjoy this but by actually coming up over there and flying down here all by yourself, actually right here in the area. So don't forget to come over here and check it out. That's it for this edition of Time Out. Goodbye for now and until next time.
And that was our edition of Expat Living for this week. For more of our programs, do log on to vtv4.vn or our YouTube channel at vtv4go.